Hello everyone, welcome back to Build Order Tutorials. This time we have Dark showing us how to do a Ling Queen Nydus Worm all-in versus Protoss. It's going to be on Tropical Sacrifice for this demonstration, but really it can be done on any map, so feel free guys. And now let's get into the build order. Get an Overlord. For Zerg, just assume that if I'm not telling you to build something specific, you're building drones. Go ahead and send a drone out. In this video, Dark takes his third as a second base, assuming that he was going to be probe blocked. So it's a 17 hatchery. $18 gas. And 17 pool. Fill the finished extractor with drones. Build 4 Lings and 2 Queens. Then start your speed at roughly 210 and take 2 drones off of gas and then get an Overlord. Third hatchery. Have your Lings out scouting a little bit. Get another set of Lings and a Queen. An Overlord. And another Overlord. In this game, we do have a Void Ray on the way, so if there is a Void Ray or a Phoenix, then assume one of these Overlords you send across the map are going to die and prepare accordingly. Or maybe 2 Overlords will die. The point is, compensate for Overlord deaths. Get another Queen. And since we're up against a Stargate, go ahead and get a Spore Crawler. In the main base, should be fine. Your third Queen. Helping to protect the second hatchery. Another Overlord. Start up your lair and fill the gas geyser once again. Get a second spore at your third hatch location. Gets 4 more Lings. And another Queen. Get 1 more extractor. And another Queen. Should be checking around for a third base around this time as well. If they don't have third base, something's up. Get 6 Lings. Remember to fill the second extractor. And now slap down a Nydus worm. 3 times overlords, since we're going to be getting a lot of supply. Another queen. And build as many lings as freaking possible. Get a baneling nest. More and more lings. Prepare to slap your Nydus worm down either offensively, as you see Dark do here, or if you can go into the main base, then you can try there as well. Dark gets a few more drones here, so about 4 more, and then back into a lot of ling production. And a backup Nydus worm too, totally fine to get. 2 more queens, basically queens and lings, hopefully until you win. See Dark kind of hitting with the lings first, pairing Nydus worms, and then really using Nydus worm for the queens. And eventually in this game, since it didn't end up winning right then and there, Dark did eventually get a Roach-Warren Evolution Chamber. Went back on the defense, got up to more drones, 4th base, you know, a typical macro game. Once you've either done sufficient damage, or you realize you are incapable of doing sufficient damage, and you're trying to basically get on the emergency repair side. In this game, also, Dark did kind of just continue pressuring by beat-bopping around main base, natural 3rd base, incorporating pure Ling Queen, maybe pure Baneling, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of play there once the Nydus worm is up and running. Now let us move on to the build discussion. So we got strengths. First and foremost, of course, it's a prize factor. It is a cheese, and cheeses can insta-win. Sometimes I've won games with this type of build just with the Nydus worm, actually. They hear a Nydus worm and they just tap out. So probably not going to be that easy all the time, but it certainly can be very easy. Mobility improves chances of doing damage, so with the Nydus worm plus the very fast lings, there's a chance that you're just going to find the Protoss not paying attention at a pivotal moment. Either they're going to get surrounded or lose out on very important static defense, perhaps even pylons powering their gateways, which then lead to further problems down the road. The point is, it can be quite tricky because of how fast a lot of it is. Of course, the queens are not fast, but they can provide some of that buffer, especially if they're going up against someone who is going Stargates still, which you might in your latter games. The queens obviously help right there, but then they also are just going to be that little bit extra that the Protoss has to take care of. But they're slow, so the mobility is really the strength. Weaknesses, we do have the lack of safe early defense, basically the Roach-Warren. So you saw that Dark had, a greedy build because he was trying to get to an actually very offensive build, kind of weirdly enough, but that's how it's going to work out in a perfect world. So if you were up against something like Resident Glaives build or fast DTs, you might have trouble, especially with the Resident Glaives build or any type of 2-base build. You might have trouble, so scouting obviously very important still. This build can be scouted and loses lethality the more Nydus worms are denied. So actually in that game, Dark was scouted just before he was ready to go, and the Protoss opponent still could not hold on well enough. But that was because the Lings initially got like some good surrounds and actually caused a lot of problems. The way that this really sucks is that even if you're not scouted, you are scouted, whatever, what really sucks about this is that if your first Nydus worm gets denied, that already increases the chance of the Protoss holding. I don't have a specific number in mind, but it drastically increases it, because now they know the jig, right? Jig is up, and then they've already delayed an attack even further. So the more times Nydus worms are denied, by the 3rd or 5th one, you're probably dead. Like, just give up on it, right? Maybe use them as fakes from then on out. And then last, it does have trouble with static defense and SimCity. So by that, I mean if the Protoss kind of figures things out, gets defensive, and has appropriately safeguarded cannons and shield batteries, especially the shield batteries that are then overcharged, and you can't bust it down. Your Lings can't get us around. The Queens can't focus fire it down. The Banelings are just a little too far away for some reason. Then that's going to cause a lot of problems. The Queens also are going to be extra slow and derpy if they're around some SimCity. So sometimes you'll see people get a Nydus from up in the main base of a Protoss and you think, oh my gosh, that's the worst thing possible. And then the SimCity kind of works out favorably for the Protoss. So they have a little bit more time to actually get up to the main base. Their gateway's still powered. They're still warping in units. They're merging their Archons. And you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't that bad. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes SimCity is absolutely going to be a factor you have to consider even kind of prior to dealing with the actual army. And tips and tricks. So I noted this in the video. Once again, Dark 17 hatched with the goal of taking the third instead of the natural. Generally, if you are going to plan on being able to take the natural, you don't think the probe block is going to be happening, either because you think the opponent doesn't care to do so, or you think they're going to mistime it, not bother going for a supremely early probe. But either way, I mean, you can try and take it, and that's going to be at 16, not 17. But then keep in mind, if you miscalculate on that part and you do get blocked out, you're going to be having a little bit more awkwardness. So sometimes you'll see it being so awkward with some of the non-professional players that they just kind of give up and get a spawning pool. You don't really want that to happen, so just keep in mind maybe going straight to the 17 hatch, depending on how your latter games have gone so far, might be the better idea. Be mindful of Oracle and Void Ray pathing when playing Nydus Worm. So in that last, the demonstration in this game, we did see that the Nydus Worm was scouted by 2 Adepts, and that was just really kind of almost crazy coincidental scouting. There's not usually, I think, a lot of times where Protoss will have the 2 Adepts going towards there at that time in the game. You know, when speed is done, usually the Protoss is depending purely on their maybe air units, right? Usually Stargate in this matchup to get that scouting done. So usually when you're placing down a Nydus Worm, as Dark did, you're thinking about the most secure location against those air units. And that is usually in the second to the natural, the actual natural, because the third and the main can be a little more like of a fence almost around the natural, especially if you have spores and queens there as well. So that's why I put it there, and just kind of keep that in mind as well when you think about where you're going to put this down in whatever map you're spawning on. Overlords providing vision in main is great, but Lings providing vision around third is fine. I think that is absolutely the best way that could be put. So again, usually Nydus from going for the main base, kind of no matter the context, is considered one of the worst things possible. A lot of your vulnerabilities are on the main base, and then your army's not there, right? But while that is maybe ideal, always be mindful of what you really want to achieve if you get up in the main base. The Lings around the third, or even in this game, they were kind of in between the main and the third and the fourth. They're also fine. Point is, as long as you get a Nydus Worm up relatively close to a point of pressure. So you don't want to be Nydus Worming back on your side of the map, but you don't want to be Nydus Worming literally on the probe line, which they're just going to go ahead and kill. So don't be discouraged if the Overlords even die, right? Because I was just a bit lucky that Dark didn't have one of the Overlords caught by the Void Ray. Don't be discouraged by that. Just go for a more forward attack. And last, fake Nydus Worms can split your opponent's army. And remember that Queens do need creep to transfuse, actually, is another really important one. So the fake Nydus Worms are the ones that maybe you get the third base Nydus Worm up, so you're pressuring the third base, and the Nydus Worm in the main goes up, and you actually didn't put anything in it. And so the Protoss is kind of forced to take it seriously, so they might waste a warp into the main base, they might start pushing their army towards the main base, and then actually didn't have anything coming out of there. So keep that in mind as kind of a trick you can do. And yes, please keep in mind that Queens need creep to transfuse nowadays. So if you start to go off of creep, which happens pretty quickly, Nydus Worm did get a buff to its creep spread, but it doesn't, it's actually not actually creep tumor, it's not actually like a hatchery. So if the Queens do, and they will eventually, move off of creep, hey, don't be surprised they can't transfuse, which they're probably going to be primarily transfusing each other. Not really the Lings or the Banelings, and since the Nydus Worm does have its own creep, you don't usually have to worry about not being able to transfuse the Nydus Worm, but just something to remember, because I think some people are absolutely going to forget in the heat of battle, in the heat of the cheese, so just keep it in mind if you end up needing it, which you might not. Maybe the Lings and Banelings do it all for you anyways. So that is it. Hopefully this video gives you some free wins, and make sure to thank Dark for the build as well. And I hope it also gives you some very fun games too. So if you liked the video, please like, subscribe, comment, all that good YouTube stuff. And I will see you guys later for another build order tutorial.